Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Launch Codes Football. My name is Chris,
And I'm Chelsea.
and today we're going to be talking about Julio Jones going to the Bucs. Big shocking news. And then we've got some Lamar Jackson drama. A little bit of news revolving around him. So today we got episode 45, and I'm feeling good. Chelsea, how are you feeling today?
I was feeling good. And then I started thinking about Tom Brady's fake retirement. And I started thinking about that tweet that the Colts put on Twitter of that episode from SpongeBob where Squidward runs around fanatically saying boo hoo and throwing confetti. And that's how I felt when Tom Brady retired. Except then he unretired and decided, oh no, I'm going to come back. And I was just mourning the fact that a perfect meme was wasted on his fake retirement.
True. Rip, rip, rip in peace meme.
It was such a good meme and it's a wasted. And if they repost it, I will know and it will not be the same.
True. And you'll still be like, is he coming back?
Oh my gosh, he would be the person to retire a second time and then come back again.
Why not?
I don't want him to.
True. All right. Well, today we're going to go ahead and get into it. So, the big news of this week happening yesterday being Tuesday. For us, we record on Wednesdays.
Tuesday.
We got Julio Jones going to the Buccaneers, signing for 1 year, $6 million. Literally, man took the bare minimum to go win a Super Bowl. Do I blame him? No. So now the Bucs
Should
have
you
on
blame him?
offense.
Yes.
No, no, no. So the Bucs now have on their offense Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, and Kyle Rudolph, who they just recently acquired over the past couple weeks here. So Chelsea, now with this like kind of stacked offense, Chelsea is not convinced this is actually a stacked offense. Actually, we're just gonna get into it. Chelsea, why did I even saw you posted on our Twitter? Yeah. Chelsea
Wasn't
posted
me.
this one. Don't
Actually,
hate
that
me.
was our friend.
Oh
I don't run
yes.
our
Okay,
Twitter.
never mind. Either way, you seem to agree with this tweet that we put out about Julio Jones not really being that big of a deal in signing. He's not gonna make that big of an impact. Chelsea, that's going to piss some people off. So let us know, why do you agree with this idea? What's going through your head with this?
Okay, so here's the thing. He was great with the Falcons, right? I mean, a generational player for the Falcons, one of the best people they've ever had on their team, right? He goes to the Titans, gets a big deal from the Titans. Everyone's so excited. They're like, Lamar is here. He's still playing well. He's going to elevate our offense. And you know what he did last year? Let me spell it out for you. Nothing. He did nothing. Nothing. Now, obviously, I keep in mind the fact that he's playing with Ryan Tannehill, who I believe is average at best, and he's playing with Derrick Henry, who I believe is probably the best running back in the league straight up just for running. So obviously that's going to take away some touches from the receivers. So all of that bearing in mind, if you watched Julio last year when he did play, there was a pretty obvious drop off in how he looked physically, the way he played. He just doesn't look the same. And it's not his fault. I mean, he's just older now and he's a veteran and he just doesn't have the same capacity to be able to do the things that he did so spectacularly earlier in his career when he was with Matt Ryan and the Falcons. Now, I will say, I don't think I think that there's too big of a deal being made about this because I think Julio Jones is washed at this point, which, knowing me, I'll probably eat my words later in the season when he has 2,000 passing yards and 15 touchdowns, because of course he would. But in my opinion, he's washed. That by no means makes him not good. Like, he's still good. He's still better than a lot of guys that never see the field in the league. But if you're expecting Falcons level production out of Tampa Bay Julio Jones, it's not going to happen. Not because he wasn't ever once capable of it, but because he's just older now. And like I said earlier, he just doesn't have the capacity to perform at the same level that he has because now he has an injury history. He's older. He's never really been super fast. So he's not the fastest guy. Now, jump ball guy, okay, I'll give him that. He's always been good at that. But I just was very unimpressed last year when he went to the Titans. Everyone in the league freaked out when he went to the Titans, said it was going to push the Titans over the edge. And I just didn't buy it. I was like, his last couple of seasons at the Falcons weren't great. And they weren't bad, but they weren't what we're used to seeing. And I think there was a pretty obvious decline in his play. So I just wasn't impressed when they signed him to a deal last year. And he just didn't work out. And, sometimes that happens. That's okay. Sometimes that's just not where you're meant to be. But he'll make an impact with Tampa Bay, obviously, because he is Julio Jones and he's playing with Tom Brady, and Tom Brady elevates the play of everyone. So obviously he's going to make an impact. But I don't think he's going to come in and take away the number 2 job from Chris Godwin. Like, I don't think he's going to come in and take away the number 1 job from Mike Evans. Like, he's a solid 3, but to put him any higher than that, at this point in his career, I just don't agree personally. But see, of all of the places for Julio Jones to have a resurgent year after the past couple of years just haven't been that good compared to how he did play, this would be the year, right? Because he's on a stacked team. He has Tom Brady. He has a good O-line, finally, right? Obviously, that doesn't impact him as much as it does a quarterback or a running back, but, it still plays a role. So he's on a really good team with a really good defense and a really good play caller and a really good quarterback. So if he was going to have a really good year, this is where he would have it. I'm just of the opinion that he won't. I could see him having 700 yards, 6 or 7 touchdowns. I don't know. I don't see him beating out Godwin and Evans for the number 1 or number 2 jobs. I just think that those 2 guys are too good.
Dang. Can we just get it that we have it first here on Launch Codes Football? Episode 45. Chelsea just said Julio Jones might be a decent wide receiver 3. 3. That's spicy. And
at this point in his career. Now, obviously, when he's with the Falcons, obviously not. Like, he was a wide receiver 1 and one of the best wide receivers for years when he was with the Falcons. But people forget how horrible he was last year. He was terrible. And now everyone thinks that he's going to go back to putting up 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns just because he's with Tom Brady. Like, you can't unage yourself,
It's true.
Like, well, I think he'll play better than he did with Ryan Tannehill, but I don't think he's going to beat out Mike Evans and Godwin.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think you have a point to some extent of that. He really didn't have that great of a year last year, even when he was in. Now, I do think the Titans definitely were a run-first football team, so that could have been a little bit of a difference there. And I know, like you said, kind of that was part of it there, Honestly, the Titans just had a weird year last year, losing so many of their star players, but then still making the number 1 seed, but then losing in the first round of the playoffs.
But even still, the last couple of years with the Falcons, they weren't a run-heavy team, and Julio really didn't put up that many touchdowns. And that's when he was still with the Falcons. Like, he put up yards when he played, but that last year or two, he didn't really put up that many touchdowns, because I saw fantasy people complaining left and right that they drafted him in the first round and he put up 5-6 touchdowns that year. They're like, come on, man. I drafted you at like number 12 overall and you're going to give me 4 touchdowns. That's just rude.
I mean, but also the Falcons were just bad. And that's what happens when you're on a bad team. You don't score many touchdowns.
That had never stopped him before, though. I mean, the Falcons have always been bad, and he's had much better seasons.
I mean, but not too long ago, they made a Super Bowl back in oh my gosh. Not too long ago. Oh my gosh, like 2017. Yes, 2017. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'm blanking. Forgive me. Yeah, I believe it was 2017.
I'm looking at his Super Bowl. I'm looking at his stats right now. 2018, right? He was still really good. He had 113 receptions for almost 1,700 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's a solid year, right?
And they were good that year.
Yeah. The next year, 2019, he had 99 receptions for 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns. Still a decent year, right? Pretty good year. Better than average for sure. 2020, last year at the Falcons, his receptions are cut in half. 51 receptions, 771 yards, and 3 touchdowns, right? Now, I get that they weren't the best, but he's put up way better numbers in his career at the Falcons when they were bad before that. And then last year, he had 31 receptions for 434 yards and 1 touchdown. So to say that there is not a decline from 2019 to 2021 is just, there is pretty obviously a decline. Obviously,
yes,
it's not all on him, but
yeah. I do agree that there's been a pretty dramatic decline in Julio's play. Overall, he's not able to carry, the passing game like he used to be able to. I do agree with that, which is why I think he's a perfect fit for Tampa because they don't need him to do that.
Right. He'll have success with Tampa. He'll be a good wide receiver 3. But if people are expecting him to put up 1,700 yards and 8 touchdowns, like, that's just not going to happen. There's too many weapons on that offense. They have too good of an O-line, and they have too many good running backs for him to carry like that.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think if you go to Tampa, you're not expecting to have those. You don't need to have those big years either. I mean, you really don't. You just have to be good enough. So, it's one of those teams where everybody can kill you on this team. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's like they're crazy.
That's the thing. Him being good enough is not a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 1 to me. Like, you're better than good enough if you're a top wide receiver on a professional football team. Like, good enough is that you're there and you make an impact and it matters when you play. But at the end of the day, if you're not there, like, they can still win without you.
That's true. But something else I want to think about with this is, how do you feel if you're a Falcons fan?
Terrible.
I was just like, man, you've had it rough enough. You had
Julio
the Calvin Ridley issue.
Man.
You had the Calvin Ridley issue. You got Matt Ryan leaving to another team. I know you've already been bad as is, but now it's like, just to kind of rub it in your face, your like favorite player is gone to the rival team. He could have picked a lot of other teams. He picked the team in your division. And so this one's got to hurt, especially, after knowing that Julio played so well in that Super Bowl that they lost. I mean, he really did. Every time they threw him the ball, it worked, and he made some incredible catches. He's probably still like, what the heck, guys? How did we lose this game? Throw me the ball, type of deal. Wouldn't it be hilarious, though, if we got a Colts versus Bucs Super Bowl? I mean, that would be something.
Hey, I mean, the Colts and the Packers and one other team, I believe, were in the running for Julio. Which, I mean, it would have made sense for Julio to go to Indy because Matt Ryan is there. But I just didn't want to shell out $8 million for Julio Jones. He could have gotten more if he didn't go to the Bucs. Like, he took the bare minimum to go to the Bucs. He could have probably gotten between 8 and 10 million if he went anywhere else. I just personally don't want to pay him that. I'd rather pay Quentin Nelson that. I would rather bring T.Y. Hilton back on a 1-year, $5 million deal because he's already familiar with the team than bringing in a Julio Jones who may be good and may go back to what he was, or he may be what he was last year. Like, I'd rather just take the risk on someone I'm already familiar with.
Yeah, that's fair.
Dude, Falcons fans have to feel like he sold his soul to go to the Bucs. That's just wrong, man. I just imagine how he felt signing that contract. He was like, the things you do for a Super Bowl, man.
No, I mean, here's the thing, man. Like, I think who's really kicking themselves over this, and maybe it's not their office, I don't know. I think the Packers missed out. I think they need so much help at receiver, and they refuse to address the issue. In fact, they trade away Devontae Adams. I mean, and they still got a lot for him. But let's just talk about how, like, I know this is kind of a tangent, but let's talk about how basically Jordan Love has been a first-round pick that they have not used, or they've used for like one game last year against the Chiefs. And really
feeling like a waste now, eh?
I think from the get-go it was a waste if you weren't going to start him. I know at the time there was doubts about Rodgers' health because he had just come off a couple years straight of injury, and I understand that that's what they were thinking. But honestly, I think the Packers screwed up by not taking some type of receiver, something to help them. Because in truth, they have
Allen Lazard.
They needed help. Exactly. And Lazard's good. And Valdez-Scantling, they're good. But like, let's just talk about how, yes, Julio Jones, like you said, may not be what he used to be, but he would be a reliable veteran that if you throw a jump ball, And believe me, Aaron Rodgers can throw a jump ball. Like, you throw it to him, he can go get it.
Hey,
So
I
I
will
don't
say
know.
I would take old Julio Jones over Allen Lazard and Valdez Scantling. Not because I think they're bad, but I mean, Allen Lazard had his best season last year. He had 513 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he was obviously a big red zone target. But if he is the wide receiver one, if Allen Lazard is the wide receiver one on this team and the most yards he's ever put up is 513, I am worrying as a Packers fan.
It's like the Packers are just allergic to drafting receivers or something. Because I mean, they really look, like we said, like you were saying, Julio Jones may not be what he used to be, but I really think the Packers needed some type of veteran,
Yeah.
something to fill the hole that's left with Devontae Adams being traded away. So yeah, if you're a Packers fan listening, rip, I'm sorry. I mean, hey, maybe, I mean, Aaron Rodgers can make a lot of things work, but I think he is getting to the age where he's not going to just, he's going to eventually, pretty soon, probably within the next few years, get to a point where he's either sick of carrying bad offenses or he's not going to be able to, whichever comes
And
first.
you would think that of all of the parts of their team that they would want to address, it would be wide receiver, right? Because they're solid at quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a good tight end in Robert
Mm-hmm.
Tonyan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their O line is not bad. I mean, it's not the
Mm-hmm.
best, but it's not the worst, right? Their running backs are really good. Their defense is by no means bad. It's like the only glaring hole they had on their team was wide receiver, and they did nothing.
Exactly. I think it's crazy. I think this is a very interesting move from Julio. It made plenty of sense, though. I don't think anyone is that shocked, to be honest. But anyways, let's go on to the next topic we got here. We got some interesting commentary from an undisclosed NFL defensive coordinator. They did not
Boo.
choose to name themselves. I can't say I
Probably the
blame them.
Browns.
True. We've got Lamar Jackson criticism here, and that's true. It could be the Browns, could be a Steelers person. I don't know.
It could be
Basically,
me. You never know.
exactly. Well, basically, I'll say part of the quote because this was a really long quote done by The Athletic. But I want to at least get into a little bit of what was said. So, this unnamed defensive coordinator said about Lamar Jackson, he's so unique as an athlete, and he's a really good football player. But I don't care if he wins league MVP 12 times. I don't think he'll ever be a number one as a QB. He'll be a number one as a football player, but not as a quarterback. So many games come down to 2 minute to the 2 minute. And that is why they have a hard time advancing, even though they are good on defense. Playoffs are tight. You have to be able to throw the ball. And he is just so inconsistent at throwing the ball. It is hit or miss. That's only part of the quote, but I think that pretty much sums up your thoughts on it. I mean, he's not saying he's a bad football player. I think that's not at all what he's saying, but he and a lot of other people, to be honest, have this take about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, good player. He can run real well. He can make things happen. He can look flashy. He can put two dudes in an ankle breaker. He can do all of that. He can even throw a decent deep ball at times, but his passing is inconsistent, and that's not going to win you games. I looked back just to give a little bit of my take on this. I looked back at kind of the Super Bowl winners and losers of the previous years, and I mean, you really, I mean, this league in general is pass happy. I mean, if you look at the past few Super Bowls, you've got, Matt Stafford just winning one versus Joe Burrow, who are both pass happy quarterbacks. A year before that, Tom Brady, definitely not a running quarterback. Uh,
What? You don't say.
Kansas City, San Francisco, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Jimmy Garoppolo, both passing quarterbacks. I mean, you just keep looking at the previous years and you do see that the Super Bowl winners do tend to be guys that throw the ball. Albeit, we do have to look at a little bit and say, well, Tom Brady's been in half of them in the past 20 years, it seems like, and that's not entirely wrong. So, what I personally think is that I think you can win with Lamar Jackson because I think the league is slowly shifting to this type of quarterback, or at least the dual threat. Um, I think you can win with it. I mean, look at this. The Bears made the playoffs with Rex, or made the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman.
And
Made
lost,
the Super
by the
Bowl
way.
and lost, yes, to the Colts, and they lost. I mean, but if you can make a Super Bowl with that, telling me you can't win it with one, and I mean,
Lamar
I don't
Jackson
think
is 100 times better than Rex Grossman.
exactly. So I don't really think it's like you need this goated quarterback to be able who's just Patrick Mahomes or Brady to be able to win one. It seems like it in the recent years, but I think that you just need a guy that's good enough. I mean, I know I'm not giving any hate, Chelsea. I know this is a sensitive topic for you, but I would argue that when the Denver Broncos beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl, Peyton Manning was not a very good passer at that point in his career.
No, he wasn't.
He was pretty bad
He
for a
was
lot of
hurt.
he was hurt and he was benched
And
for
old.
Brock Osweiler.
And he was old.
But they were still able to win. Now, did it take an all-time, great defense? Yes, it did. I'll admit that. But I still think that, he wasn't this super amazing passer at the time, but they still made it work. So I think what this defensive coordinator makes sense. I do kind of understand. I mean, let's be honest, Lamar Jackson has not had the best success in the playoffs. I mean, if you want to talk about some playoff failures, I mean, look at that Titans game where they played when they were the number 1 seed and Derrick Henry just destroyed them. I mean, Earl Thomas talking all the smack and then Derrick Henry just running right over him.
Earl.
And to be honest, the Titans weren't a very pass happy team either. So, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think the problem is, though, you do look at running teams and they do seem to struggle sometimes in the playoffs. I mean, even this year with the Titans, they were built with Derrick Henry, right? That was like their guy. And of course he got hurt, but then they put him back in the playoff game. I think the problem with running teams, you have with the Ravens or the Titans, for example, they struggle when it comes to scoring points or if things aren't going as well. I think a pass happy team like the Chiefs when they were playing the San Francisco 49ers, who in the Super Bowl, and which by the way, the 49ers were a run first team because you remember they ran the ball a lot. And to be honest, I think they lost that game because they stopped running the ball when they were up 10 points with 8 minutes to go and had the ball. I mean, yep. I don't know why you go away from your offense. And I'm sorry, Jimmy Garoppolo is not the kind of passer I'm trusting to put. I'm not putting my trust in him to win the Super Bowl on his arm. Like I didn't. And to be honest, yeah, it was fair. He did not play well in the final quarter and they went away from what they could do. I think running teams kind of have this struggle at times. I'm not saying passing teams don't, because most NFL teams nowadays are passing teams and most NFL teams don't win a Super Bowl in the year. Only one does. So I just kind of think that Lamar Jackson can win a Super Bowl. I think he has the talent to. I think if the Ravens build right around him and they put a really great defense, they really can make it work. But his playoffs haven't been the best. Although this past year they did make it to the second round, coming fairly close to beating the Bills. But I mean, either way, it's just the NFL's crazy, man.
To quote my fiance, this coordinator is pretty obviously, and I quote, an old fart. Because, listen, hear me out. What young coordinator who has experience with dual threat quarterbacks is going to say that Lamar Jackson does not have a shot to be the best? It makes sense. If you are a traditionalist and you are an older coordinator, you grew up with the stereotypical, prototypical, big arm, doesn't move, that was your quarterback stereotype. That is what you grew up in. That is what you have coached your whole career, blah, blah, blah. So if you have a guy like that looking at a guy like Lamar, who breaks every stereotype about a quarterback that you could possibly break, it makes sense that they would say this. Pretty obviously, I mean, I don't know who this coordinator is, but I'm led to believe that perhaps they just don't understand the value of a dual threat quarterback. It just sounds like this coordinator is very traditionalist and that anything that deviates from how football used to be played is bad, which is not the case, obviously. But I mean, it's not like Lamar Jackson has been bad. Like, the dude won an MVP for a reason. The dude has not won a Super Bowl. Yes, I would argue some of what is due to his own play. But let's think about the Ravens last year. Their wide receivers gave him no help, really, at all, outside of like Mark Andrews. He really has not had a solid wide receiver one that has lived up to what he was supposed to be his entire career. He just hasn't had that. So if you put that in the equation and you look at the numbers he's put up, it's pretty staggering that he has thrown as many yards as he has, considering the fact that he hasn't even had a true wide receiver one. Like, Marquise Brown was supposed to be that guy, and he rarely was. Like, so he really didn't have any receivers, right, that were consistent, that were wide receiver one caliber, that he could rely on, which means he had to do more of it himself, right? Which means the man's going to run the ball. And obviously, if you don't have a lot of strong receivers, what are you going to be? You're going to be a run first offense because you don't have the air power to carry your offense. So, taking all of those things into consideration, the fact that Lamar Jackson has the stats that he has is pretty astonishing. I mean, last year, for example, he threw for almost 2,900 yards. He had, let's see here, he had 16 touchdowns and he had 13 interceptions. So obviously, last year was not his best. No one's going to deny that. No one's going to say that, he had a stellar year last season. But the year before that, I mean, he had 2,700 yards, about 2,800. He had 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Year before that, he had 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I mean, I understand those numbers are not as good as the Mahomes and the Bradys and the Rodgers of the world. But I mean, those guys are the best of the best. And at least 2 of them are a lot older than Lamar Jackson is and are on a lot better offenses than Lamar Jackson is. So to say that Lamar Jackson does not have a shot to be the best quarterback in the league at some point in his career, I think is just nearsighted. I mean, it would not surprise me if it never happened just because of the length and depth and breadth of talent at the quarterback position in the league. It would not surprise me if he didn't ever become number one. But to say that he has no shot, I feel like is just not only unfair, but also unrealistic. I mean, the dude is really, outside of Michael Vick, he's really the first of his kind at the quarterback position. One could argue that he is revolutionizing football with the way that he plays quarterback. So he might be the stepping stone. He might not ever be the best, but the guys who come after him that are young now, that are going to be in the league later, that are going to play just like he does, you better believe that that's going to be the new prototype quarterback in the league. I mean, for example, look at Arch Manning, kid's 17, right? Just committed to college. But he's a dual threat. He's everything that his uncles were never, right? They were not runners. They were not athletic. They did not have the strongest arms of all of the quarterbacks when they played. You know what Arch Manning has? All of that. Arch Manning is like Peyton Manning on drugs. So to say that he just has no shot of being the best, I don't buy it. It just sounds like someone is salty, in my opinion. Like, I mean, even look at the guys that are going to get drafted this upcoming year, like Bryce Young. Dude's going to be really good. I mean, he plays like Lamar. CJ Stroud. You could argue he plays like Lamar. I would argue that he's better than Bryce Young. Those dudes are going to be really good. And you better believe that they're watching Lamar Jackson play football the way that he plays and going, that seems to be working. I wonder if I could do that. And you know what? They tried it. And let me tell you, it worked. So I don't buy into this. There's always a shot you won't be the best. But to say you have no shot to be the best at all, to say that he could be the best player in the league, but not the best quarterback, correct me if I'm wrong, but more often than not, the best players in the league are quarterbacks. So I'll leave it at that.
There you go. There you have it. Well, everyone, those are kind of just the topics we had this week. I think, though, There were some interesting ones. I think this whole thing is fascinating, but we definitely want to know what you guys think. One, does Julio go into the Bucs really make a huge deal as the media is making it, or is Chelsea right in that he's gonna be like a solid wide receiver three?
Knowing
Does this
my luck,
make
it'll bite me. It'll be like
hmm
week 4 and he'll have like 7 touchdowns.
he's
So
gonna break his like 300-yard game
yeah,
record that he had back in
you
like
know,
2016?
I'm just prepared for the inevitable. It would not surprise me if he had the best year of his career because he's with Tom Brady, which, if you're a Falcons fan, hurts even more.
Would
Right in
be
the
really
heart.
funny. It's gonna happen over the Falcons too. Um, and
Has
then you've got
400 yards.
oh yikes. And then does Lamar Jackson have a chance at have a shot at being the best quarterback in the league, or is that already set in stone? Is this coordinator right? We want to know what you guys think. Is this defensive coordinator really just salty, or does he have a point? I
You
want
know,
to know what you guys think.
I have a little tangent on that. I saw a headline earlier today or yesterday that said there's a chance that Lamar Jackson gets paid $50 million a year when he gets paid. Thoughts?
That's a lot of money. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me eventually. I mean, quarterbacks are getting paid more and more as time goes on. I mean, Kyler Murray just had a huge contract,
But
so
$50 million a year guaranteed? Where do you even get $50 million from?
when you're an NFL team, you can find the money.
Oh, not that I don't think he deserves a big contract, but that's just insane.
I mean, how much is Mahomes making? Remember
I
his
think
big
he's
thing? It's like 600
making,
million for 10 years.
is it
That's
like
like six.
42 million a year?
Yeah, that's true. I guess not all of it's guaranteed. That would be insane.
That
But
would,
in 600 million over 10 years is 60 million a year, assuming you hit it all. So
if it's all guaranteed.
it's insane.
Yeah, so his contract was $450 million, average annual value of 45 million. Lamar Jackson is good, but I would not pay him more than Patrick Mahomes.
True. Well,
So
there
if
you
Patrick
go.
Mahomes is making 45 million and Lamar Jackson is trying to get 50, no hate towards Lamar. I just stood up for him. But yeah, I I'm not gonna pay him more than Patrick Mahomes. That's
I
just
mean,
me.
look at like Tom Brady. Like, when was the last time he was the highest paid quarterback? Like, I don't think it's been a long time, or I don't remember it ever happening. It's always been like
I don't
Rodgers
remember
or
either.
somebody else. So, I mean, honestly, the best isn't always the most paid either.
That's true. I'd say at this point in time it is, with Lamar Jackson being paid the most, but I mean outside of like Rodgers, I guess. So maybe second, but
I
I
just mean like the best quarterback in the league is not always the, you know, most paid, which is just
right.
fascinating. It does. I mean, normally they do deserve what they're getting paid. So, but either
Yeah,
way,
I
let us
mean,
know what you guys think here.
he'll get a big deal, but I yeah, I don't know if I would pay him more per year than Mahomes.
That's no, I agree. I mean, love to Lamar. We've been defending him, but more than Mahomes is going to be a really hard deal for me.
Hey, let's just hope he doesn't have a caveat in his contract about watching film like Kyler does. I
That's
can't.
funny. That's funny to me. But anyways, I think this is where we're gonna wrap it up for today's episode. So, Chelsea, you want to go ahead and lead us out of here?
For sure. So thanks for listening, guys. Tune back in next week for more content. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at LaunchCodesFB and on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at LaunchCodesFootball. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Chris.
And we will see you next week.
See ya.
Later.